Hey, Facebook Live. Hope you are rocking and rolling. Hey, we've got another amazing week for you. If you are watching this, please feel free to give me a shout out and let me know where you're watching from. Love to call people out in real time instead of doing what I always, it seems, have to do when I'm broadcasting and recording a podcast. So glad to have a dialogue, glad to answer any questions that you have. I am on a really tight schedule today. There's a lot that is going on over here at Be The Talk HQ. And what I have decided to do is actually add another shout out on these Facebook Live events at the beginning of the week. I want to not just give you the highlights from last week. I don't just want to tell you who's on deck this week. And I want to add a few things. I want to add what episodes are dropping this week on Be The Talk podcast, because the whole point of this is not to do Facebook Live. This is really a borrowed platform. Go over to BeTheTalk.com, subscribe if you haven't already to the podcast, and listen to some of these amazing people that I'm going to let you know who they are, who dropped. They are outstanding and they are amazing. Plus, there are always new applications coming in to Be The Talk headquarters that I am also accepting. And so I want to give those amazing people a shout out as well. But there's a little bit of a problem here because I can't see the description that I used when I wrote this. And so I've got to look up on the second screen what I actually wrote down because it's actually hidden from me. But as I am doing that, we are going to pivot over. I had some great interviews this week. We did have a little bit of, as we always do, a little bit of fun extra drama with schedules and things like that. And that's just par for the course when we have something here like Be The Talk. So let's just dive in. Who do we have coming up this week? I just can't wait because I've watched these interviews, only 7 interviews this week. If you've been thinking, Nathan, you've been slacking off. I'd have to say you were almost right, because if you look at the interviews, the fresh interviews that I'm doing weekly, they've been pretty low. And I've been doing a couple things. I've been switching up a lot of stuff over here at Be The Talk. Last week, we started the talk show format, which allows me to interview 3 people in an hour, just like I were Jimmy Kimmel or Johnny Carson or something. I figured, why should I, do all of this? Really, it's an awful lot of repetitive administrative work to bring one person on, review all the stuff, practice their bio, do all the prep stuff that I do. Why not triple it up? And I must say, it really it was a little bit of a jolt last week, just because of some technical things and whatnot, and that's to be expected. And then I must credit Zoom support, because they got over to me and they got back to me, and they actually jumped on the Zoom with me and helped me pivot a few things out and help me test a few things. So I am really, really excited this week because Talk Universe, we are ready to go. First up, we have Jackie Boone. Now, Jackie has this amazing tale of talking in her talk. It's called How Living a Life You Love Can Change the World, actually can save the world. And she taught as a teacher in rural China. And so she had the experience of teaching kids in China who didn't really have a whole lot of exposure, it sounds like, to the outside world. And she has this amazing tale. If you've ever wondered about, thought maybe I should do something really far out like that, you can kind of live vicariously through Jackie. Her talk is called How Living a Life You Love Can Save the World. And it's just brilliant. I can't wait to go behind the talk with Jackie. Next up is Jean Leggett. Her talk is called What 10-Year-Olds Taught Us About Our Tech Startup. So Jean had started a video game company that produces narrative video games. She has some really funny jokes about how kids don't lie and how yoga pants don't lie either. Really, fun little things. And then she talks a little bit about gamification, but more about the world of these kids and how they kind of defied the stereotypes. You would think the little girls would want, something kind of meek and mild, and apparently not. From the talk, you're going to enjoy her talk, what 10-year-olds taught us about our tech startup. Next, we have Eric Witsoe, and his talk is called Discovering Myself Abroad Through a Mini Adventure Perspective. Eric is an artist. He talks about comic books. He talks about photography, and he ends up moving over to Poland and considering every day a mini adventure, which is just a really wonderful frame of reference. It's a great lens from which to be able to see the world through that lens, and it's a great way to do it. After that, we have Laura Penn, who she just jumped on today. She's a kind of a newly accepted applicant, so I'm really blessed to have Laura with us this week. Her talk is called Public Speaking: How to Make Your Message Matter. And man, Laura, don't we all need a primer on public speaking? If you're a little new to public speaking, or maybe you're one of many, many people that do not particularly like to public speak, this is going to be a great talk to check out, and we're going to go behind the talk and uncover even more gold from Laura's talk. After that, Rebranding Our Shame, Adi Jaffe. And Adi has this, this is a great talk. I was hanging on to Adi's talk by my fingernails because it was just an amazing talk. At this point, it has over 450,000 views. So that tells you something. Whenever you see a talk with hundreds of thousands of views, that's worth listening to. Whether you agree or not, it's somebody that knows how to communicate. I just can't wait about this. Adi is a professor. I believe is a professor at UCLA. It's TEDx UCLA. So I'm making that assumption right now. But it's all about branding, and it's all about the power of branding as well as the power of some of the shameful things in our lives, and how Adi, through his own story, which is just a really shocking story. He used to be a drug dealer. He used to be incarcerated. He woke up basically shackled to a bed. I don't want to steal any more of his thunder, but he really tells the story very, very well. And then he pivots right over to this idea of all of us have areas of shame, and all of us have labels, and we have an opportunity to rise above the branding of those labels. After that, Barry Phillips, a legal professional. His talk is called Why It's Time to Ditch the Open Door Policy in the Workplace. And this is a very interesting talk as well, because Barry does a lot of storytelling, and I was about halfway through. I'm like, this is really a riveting story, but how does it tie together? And then Barry ties it together. I spoke too soon. He tied it together, talked about how people really need to be heard. People have different gifts, and the open door policy in the workplace really doesn't always jive with different people's backgrounds. And so there are different ways to hear people. There's different ways to communicate openness than just having an open door policy. And there were some pretty jolting things that happened in Barry's business, which was an award-winning business. And then all of a sudden, 4 top employees resign in a month. And that was a jolt that jolted him into reality. And this is an award-winning, very small business. So it was just a great talk to be able to check out. You want to check out these talks ahead of time so that when we have time for the live Facebook Live interview, then you're going to be even more informed. After that, Epiphanies. Elise Ballard gives this talk on Epiphanies. And she is actually the creator of the epiphanychannel.com. This is an older talk from about 6 or 7 years ago, and she talks about what really defines those light bulb moments in our life. What's an epiphany? It's a light bulb moment, and what happens? How can we have more amazing epiphanies in our lives? So that's what's coming up this week, Talk Universe. I am looking forward to it, and let us also review the highlights of last week. First off, Rob Portil. He is an organizer over at TEDx Sedona, and we have featured 3 of their alumni from 2017 already in Be the Talk. There weren't that many speakers. We've highlighted a pretty significant percentage because he runs a great event. So I always love having organizers here on Be the Talk because it gives us Talk Universe, for that talk that you're trying to give to change the world you want to hear. You want to get to know, and it's not always easy to get to know too many organizers, frankly, because they're very busy organizing, okay? And so that's why we have Be the Talk, whether it's an MC or an opening speaker or a closing speaker or an organizer. Sometimes we're privileged to have organizers, and so I ask them organizer questions. Rob went through the Blitz round, but he did it with his organizer hat on, so he dropped a lot of gold for us last week. After that, we had Paula Quinsee. Paula Quinsee is a relationship expert. Her talk is called Why Relationships Are the Currency of the Future. And if you've ever seen that reality show, and it's in different markets all over the world, okay, Married at First Sight. She is a relationship coach for the South Africa version of that television show. So, and the funny thing is, she kind of had the same reaction it sounded like from the interview that I did when I first found out about the show. In the United States of America, most people do not have arranged marriages, and even those that do have arranged marriages, and I don't know too many people that do, but they have other people that they know arrange the marriage, and that's not what happens on this TV show. So she had a little bit of a similar feeling, ideally, but we got to talk about that show, and she's doing some really good work out there. We brought Melissa Agnes back to Be the Talk for some bonus content about brand proofing, about crisis brands and brands in crisis, being crisis ready. Excuse me. That's actually the name of her book, Being Crisis Ready. And her episode from Be the Talk that we recorded like 2 or 3 months ago actually goes live this week. You're not going to want to miss Melissa Agnes, and we will be able to include some of that bonus content hopefully in time for when her episode goes live. After that, we had Zhenghua Yang. His talk is called Video Games Saved My Life and How They Will Save Yours. So Zhenghua, he is another video game developer. And he has a video game company, and we talked about gamification. We talked about how instead of didactically using games to try to prove educational points, which really doesn't work, we're using some of the more nuanced game theory principles to solve real-world problems and thus gamify that. And so that was a really fun awareness that I had from talking to Zhenghua. We also had Rachel Smets back for some premium content, just like we did for Melissa. Rachel is a relocation expert. She is a globalization expert. She has lived all over the world, and she called in from Switzerland. And I believe she is in Belgium or the Netherlands or in that region, but she's in Switzerland right now. And so we got to talk a little bit deeper out of her best-selling book about living abroad. And then we also had Heather Bischoff. It was always a great thing to be able to connect and to talk with Heather. And the funny thing, as I am doing this, sometimes when I'm saying people's names, I just frankly don't have the information in front of me. And so I have to pause and talk a little slowly so that I can pull it up. But her talk is called How Asking the Right Question Can Change Your Life. And Heather had some really great stuff. Heather became a mother at a younger age, and so her talk started out a little bit from her own personal experience that way, which actually turned out to be a very wonderful thing for her because she had people in her life that helped her ask the right questions. And the right question is usually not the why question, it's the how can I, or what can I do, or it's a focus question. And there's a way to be able to ask questions in a positively worded way that lead us to solutions that matter instead of trying to find meaning in suffering, which is sometimes a really hard thing to do. Heather really shared a lot of wisdom with us in her talk as well as in her interview behind the talk. So that's some of the highlights that we had last week. Let me give some shout-outs right now to the people who are going live this week. These are Be The Talk episodes. You should go to BeTheTalk.com, look us up in Apple Podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Android, Google Podcasts, all of that. We're there, okay? And these are people, they're dropping now, okay? Let's see here. Özdemir. Ergen was a great guest. That dropped, I believe, yesterday. Melissa Agnes, I believe, drops today. Don Rheem drops either tomorrow or Wednesday. Anita Collins, after that, she's one of our 1K Club winners. So many thousands of people have enjoyed her talk. Rena Delevie, she's another 1K Club awardee as well. Elchanan Rabbi Elchanan Poupko, his talk has dropped. That was a real fun interview as well. And Brian Benson, his talk is dropping this week on Be The Talk podcast. And I've got to give a shout out to Laura Penn, who's also going to be a guest this week, Sally Zimney, and Arnon Kraft. Their applications were accepted today. Now, wow, that was a lot. I can't believe I said all that in only 15 minutes. I can't believe I added 2 new categories to all the celebration, the Monday celebration of Be The Talk. It's pretty amazing that I was able to do that. I'm just so excited, and that I did that in a whopping 15 minutes. And the reason that I'm doing that so quickly is I got to hop on a conference call with some of my physician, coach, author friends in just a few minutes. We are doing some things. If you are in the medical community, if you are a resident, if you are a medical student, if you are a program director for a medical school, you probably are not watching this right now, but if you are, there's some amazing things in the works right now, and I've got to jump off this Facebook Live to prepare for that call. I'll see you this week, everybody. It all goes down on Wednesday. Take care.